I have a hyperfixation and the desire to make it everyone's problem. Today we're gonna go through everything on my physical TBR. Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. A monk gave this to my friend and then he said, "This seems up your alley." Sometimes you just need to look up a goddess. No. Currently in my apartment, there are 46 books that I have not read. This year, I read 8 from my physical TBR, so there were 56. No, that is incorrect. So we're gonna say we started off with 54 and that I've read about 15% of them. I think when it comes to physical TBRs, there are 3 types of people. The first type of person sees their physical TBR as a to-do list and might feel a sense of guilt when it comes to reading books that they own. This is kind of where I fall in a way. I don't feel guilty necessarily, but I do feel like they are tasks to be completed. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. When you buy books, you're buying them because there's something that you want to read. And then I think that if they sit on the shelf for too long, they lose that element of being new and exciting because you've been looking at the title for so long. Even if it's something that was so high on your list, at least for me, just having it for a long time kind of takes away some of that appeal. I think the second type of person when it comes to physical TBR is the type of people that view a physical TBR like a wine cellar. Some books just get better with age. There are some books that are on my physical TBR that I will feel like that with. Some of the classics. The third type of person when it comes to physical TBRs, the person who don't even know what that is, probably have more of a social life than those of us that spend a lot of time on Book Talk and BookTube. If you say a book is on your TBR, it's a book that you want to read. If it's on your physical TBR, it's a book that you own that you haven't read. If you're a reader that has been reading for a long time, you likely have a lot of these, I would presume, especially with the fact that people give books as gifts. You see a book on sale and you have to buy it. There's a whole other conversation that we could have about how buying books and reading books are 2 separate hobbies. We'll save that for another video and get right into the 46 books that I have on my physical TBR currently. And then at the end of this video, I will talk a little bit more about the 8 that I have read. So without further ado, let me get them. This is oh no, this is a little scary. I have everything completely under control. The first book that I have on my physical TBR is Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. This was written by the same author that wrote the book Lolita, and this is a collection of poems. Outside of the book Lolita, Vladimir Nabokov is very well known for writing extremely gorgeous prose. Lolita is the only book that I've read of his. Every time I read poetry, I'm like, oh, I should read more poetry, and then way too much time goes between me reading poetry books. The next book that I have on my physical TBR is a perfect example of something that I am not going to force myself to read. This is something that I snagged from my mom's library. It's just a kind of glossary of Greek mythology figures. I love Greek mythology retelling, so having a book like this on hand where I can use it as a reference I really like, but I'm not going to read this cover to cover likely. This will probably sit. Unless you've read it cover to cover and you recommend it, I can always be convinced. I can be sold. Next, I have the Tibetan Book of the Dead. I tried to listen to this as an audiobook and it was just kind of losing me a little bit, but it is extremely short, so I think that this is something that I could get to, but I have had this for several years and have never really felt called enough to read it, so this might be one that I unhaul, sell to half-price books, rehome, if you will. Next, I have the Crystal Bible, which is another reference book that I will not be reading cover to cover, but fun fact, my middle name, actually, maybe I don't want to say my middle name on the internet. If you know, you know, my middle name is in here. Next, I have Philip Pullman's Fairy Tales from the Brothers Grimm. This is another reference book that I picked up when I was reading a fairy tale retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. I thought I really love fantasy retellings. A lot of them either are direct retellings or pull inspiration from fairy tales, and I want to be able to pick it up and read the actual fairy tale either before I read the book or after I read the books. Thought this would be a good one to have on hand. I totally could read it cover to cover. I would not be opposed to that at all, so let me know if you think that that's a good idea. I've debated reading like maybe one a night or something like that. I have The Wisterious Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. This is something that I'm really looking forward to reading when I'm in the mood for something light. I know that it's extremely whimsical because I read probably the first 10 to 20 pages and ended up putting it down. I think it just wasn't the time for it. This is a book about a lady thief that has to save her aunt from a crazed pirate and his dangerously charming henchman in a fantastical historical romance. The houses fly, I think, or you drive them or something. Next, I have World of Wonders by Amy Nezuka-Matadel. This book has been on my TBR videos, I think, since I've started my YouTube. It's short. It's like a gorgeous memoir that's really well illustrated and is kind of said to be a love letter to nature and the natural world. All of those things are extremely up my alley. I don't know why I keep putting this book off. I think that when I read it, I'm gonna be like, why did I put that off for so long? So it goes. Next, I have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This was a recent ad. It was on my Christmas list and my little brother got it for me. I did try to pick this up very recently and just put it right back down because I needed something lighter. I know that this is gonna be a book that I really love. I love Donna Tartt. She also wrote The Secret History. The size of this book is like so large. This is like a 700 to 800 page novel. It's something that I think that I might need to read on an airplane. Like, I'm going to Thanksgiving to spend time with my family. I'm flying. I'm gonna have a lot of downtime that I can really get into it and sit with it. Next, I have Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice, which is said to be just like this iconic, gothic, campy, erotic novel that I picked up a while back. My mom recommended this to me, I believe. And I'm really excited because I loved Nosferatu. I watch Twilight often. I'm not going to say I love it, but I think that like vampires just kind of as a symbol I really like, but I haven't explored a lot. I think this will be a good one for me to get into that. Next, I have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is a historical fiction novel that I've seen mixed reviews about. I've heard people really liked it. I've heard that the concept was good, but that it wasn't well executed. I also am not a huge hardback reader. I much prefer to have a paperback in my hands. So this is something that has never really called to me, but I'm also not opposed to it because it's not super long. I think that the vibe of it I will really like. I've just seen mixed things about the actual writing style and the content. Next, I have A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. This is a book that I know is like pretty funky and weird. It's like a classic / modern classic. It was written in the 60s. I know that there's like a made-up language in it that can sometimes be hard to understand. I think that this will be a really great adventure, but again, just something that I'm gonna wait until I'm in the mood for. This is another one that I think I kind of adopt that mindset of this could age on my shelf and I pick it up at the right time and I really like it. It's not something that I'm gonna force myself to read because I think that you read a book like this at the wrong time, it just doesn't do you or the book any justice. Next, I have something similar in terms of the way I'm thinking about it. Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bastarrica. I did start this as an audiobook. I just tend to not like fiction audiobooks. I like to read the character's voice and hear my voice, if that makes sense to you. I can do a fiction audiobook if I'm already into the book and when I'm super into it and literally like don't want to put it down even when I'm driving. That's when I'll start to do a fiction audiobook, but I want to read the physical of this and I have it. And this is another little shorty. This is dystopian though, and I've been reading dystopians with caution lately. Next, I have The Girls by Emma Cline, which I think I've had for probably like 6 years sitting on my TBR shelf. Oh, I just see winner of the 2017 Shirley Jackson Award on the back of this book, so that's really cool. It's like a culty coming of age from what I understand, and what's not to like about those things? Next, I have this comic, The Avengers, or is it a graphic novel? I don't know. I read, what did I read? Secret Wars, I think, the graphic novel, and I loved it. I really love Marvel movies, so I've had this. I think that I put this down because I was reading Secret War, something that like I'm not in the mood for, haven't been in the mood for. I might just like pass this to my brother and let him hang on to it until I am in the mood for it. I think with some of the other books, I might also just pass back to my mom. Some of them I've stolen from her library, so I might just return them to where they are and then get them again when I feel like it, and then they'll feel new and less like a chore. Two that kind of fit that same bill that I picked up from my mom's library are Little House in the Big Woods, which actually this doesn't belong on this shelf at all because I have read this book when I was a kid and I was kind of in this mood where I wanted to reread some books that I read when I was younger. I just never got to this one and then I got out of that mood. This was actually the first book that taught me that I could read chapter books, so it's special to me, but I'm not like particularly called to reread it. I think that this edition is so cute too. If you have this edition on your shelf, besties. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I don't know if I read this when I was little. I truly like can't remember. I don't know if I really want to. I also kind of think that it is up my alley. A Mysterious Island, an Abandoned Orphanage, a Strange Collection of Peculiar Photographs. John Green has a review on the back of this. a tense, moving, and wondrously strange first novel. The photographs and text work together brilliantly to create an unforgettable story. I love like strange, weird things that you read that you're like, wow, I've never read anything like it, and I probably won't read something like this again. I think that this fits that bill, and that might make me want to read it, so we'll see. Next, I have The Seas by Samantha Hunt. This is a book that I bought purely based on the cover, and then my friend Marissa read it. It's a gothic fairy tale, which I love. I think Marissa rated it 3 stars, which, you know, when someone rates something 3 stars, I'm not like, okay, I definitely don't want to read it, but typically a 3-star rating to me is like, it was good. And if a book is a 1 star and someone hates it, it's almost like more compelling, because if a book evokes really strong feelings for some, it could evoke like a strong love for others. But when a book is just kind of like a, oh, 3 stars, like that was fine, it's like just not memorable. And so I don't know, like I kind of am oscillating. This is another short one. I did try, I got 14 pages through this and put it down. A lot of the books on my shelf, like I have picked up at some point and given it an attempt, but just not like the full correct attempt, because I feel like I don't really DNF a book until I'm like 30 to 40 pages in. Like you can't really pick up the vibe of a book, or at least I can't get a good sense of if I'm gonna like it or not until I'm like 30 pages in and things start to be happening. You start to get to know people. This is a maybe from me. Next, I have not 1 but 2 copies of A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle. Both of these that I stole from my mother, both that I read when I was younger. I don't think I ever finished it. I think that I've DNF'd this book way too many times. So it looks like I had a phase probably a few years ago. Let's see when this boarding pass was from. This is from, do they not have the years on them? Where was I going? 2023. It looks like I tried to read this in 2023 and got about 85 pages in and didn't finish it, so not super promising. And I know that I've DNF'd it like as a child too, but I have 2 of them and I feel like I really do need to try. I think that the thing that happened was that I was reading the series, like going to reread A Wrinkle in Time and then A Wind in the Door, and then getting to this book and kind of abandoning it. I think that I would like to try to read this and give it one last try without having read the first 2 right before it, to see if I can just get into it and power through, because the first 2 were not hard to read at all. I think that this one gets kind of different. The plot gets different, the vibes get different, we get a lot of new characters, and I guess whatever the changes are just haven't resonated with me. Next, I have The Operator's Manual for Planet Earth, that has a signature from the author that I found at a bookstore for like $1 in Hawaii, and I just feel like I had to. It was kind of reminding me of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That's the vibe that I get from it. I would like to give it a try. It's just something that I've not ever seen talked about, reviewed, so I haven't been like, oh, I think I'll love that. I just had to buy it because I thought that it was so cool. The message says, "Dearest Christina, may your heart be touched by the spirit of aloha that whispers between these lines. Thank you for working with our children and our future generation, Dr. Trinidad Hunt." I don't know if this will just sit on my shelf as kind of like a souvenir or if I will actually give it a try, but I feel like I should. Next, I have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and I saw the movie. Well, let me back up. I tried to read this book and I thought, I am the stupidest person on planet Earth. I do not understand a word of what's going on. The names are confusing. I simply cannot. So then I watched the movie and I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing movie. I'm so impacted by it. I can't believe that I didn't get through the book. I think that this is a book that I would really love. And so then I got the book again. And then I sat on my shelf because I remember the first time I tried to read it, I felt so dumb. But I think now that I've seen the movie, it might make a little bit more sense. I will say that I saw the movie probably 3 years ago, so it's not like I'm gonna remember every detail, but hopefully it will just kind of be in my subconscious and help out. Please let me know if you think that I should read this, and if you had similar challenges with the difficulty level of the book, because I just don't know. I feel like I've never really experienced that with a book. Like typically even a book that feels intimidating, once I start it, I'm like, okay, I got it. Something about this book, and it's just a fiction it's just a fiction book. I don't know. I have another Avengers comic because I apparently don't know how to just buy one thing at a time. I have The Boxcar Children, The Mystery in the Computer Games. This is another one that I grabbed when I was reading childhood faves. So I have read this also and just thought that it could be fun to read again. And it's tiny, so maybe I'll just read this tonight, 100 pages with ridiculously large print. easy money, but does not belong on this shelf. So my numbers were wrong. Next I have Easy Journey to Other Planets. The back says, interplanetary travel is very tempting and exciting because the sky is filled with unlimited globes of varying qualities. The desire to travel to other planets can be fulfilled by the process of yoga, which serves as a means by which one can transfer oneself to whatever planet one likes, possibly to planets where life is not only eternal and blissful, but where there are multiple varieties of enjoyable energies. Anyone who can attain the freedom of the spiritual planets need never return to this miserable land of birth, old age, disease, and death. I think that a monk gave this to my friend and then he said, this seems up your alley, and he gave it to me. It's this big. It has to be so rare that someone's watching this video has read Easy Journey to Other Planets. If that's you, please, please, please comment, I'm begging you, and tell me if I should read this. Next I have Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This is like Marcus Aurelius's journal, basically. And I'm gonna be so honest, this has just never been super interesting to me. This is a gift that I was given. I think that if I read it, I would like it. I think that I would get a lot out of it. I just never have felt like, oh, I really should read this. Next, I have Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. I don't know who these people that are giving me books think that I am and think that my reading level is, because I should be given books like The Boxcar Children, not books like Leaves of Grass. But like I said earlier, every time that I read poetry, I'm like, I should read this more. And when I read Hello Beautiful, there was a lot of Walt Whitman quotes within that book. So this book, I might do something similar to the fairy tale book and just read a little bit each night. But whenever I try to do that, it just never works. I'm not great at doing that consistently, especially because I'll be really into like whatever fiction book that I'm reading and not want to like do my one little poem read, but we'll see if I can make it happen. I would like to read this. My mother gave it to me. Next, I have The Mind Illuminated, which is basically a textbook on meditation. I found this book through a Reddit subreddit, and I used to be a little bit more into meditation than I am now. I love to do yoga, but I don't really have a meditation practice. I think if I start to get into it, it will be through this book. It's a literal textbook, but it does have really great margins for taking notes. This will be a book that I read at some point in my life, and this is always my answer to the question, if I was stuck in a room for a year, no outside media, only one book, one movie, and one album, which I love to ask people. This is always my book because I think that you could study this for years and years and years and study meditation. So if I'm ever in the situation where someone's like, quick, grab a book, an album, and a movie, like I have to know my choices, and I have this one on my shelf. It serves that purpose for me, and I'm happy with that. Next, I have 4 more reference books that I probably won't get to like read cover to cover. I have Mindfulness for Every Day. I have Life by Paulo Coelho. Honestly, like I might read it cover to cover just so that I can get it off my physical TBR shelf, but it's just quotes like from his books, and I've already read some of his books, so I feel like this is significantly less helpful than just reading The Alchemist. And also, is he canceled? I have no idea, but you know, I might just do it to move it off the shelf. I'm like selling myself on it more and more the more that I talk about it, because they're like really short. Yeah. Then I have Find Your Goddess, which is a reference book for all the goddesses. Sometimes you just need to like look up a goddess, not on the internet. Like it's 2025. I'm past looking up things on the internet. I'm past Google. Reference books or, don't know, Moon Magic. Nothing to say besides what I just said. Next, I have My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. My mom has been trying to get me to read this book for probably like since before I was born. I just have never felt excited about reading it because everyone that I've talked to about it is like, yeah, this book like ripped my heart out, smashed it up. It was so sad. Like I couldn't function for a week. You should read it. And I'm like, I don't want to, but I will. Next, I have Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. He wrote Fight Club and another book that I read called Survivor. You know about Fight Club, but I don't because I haven't seen the movie and I haven't read the book, and it's this big. I liked his other book. The tone of it was very like bleak, and being inside the head of someone who is kind of like almost sociopathic, I'm thinking of the book Survivor, kind of like can suck the soul out of you a little bit and make you feel just like really down where they are, which is a sign of really great writing. I know that this book is going to be amazing. It's another one that I have to be in the right mood for. Next, I have this small, easy, light read, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I was about to say by Jane Austen, and I was like, that just doesn't sound quite right. A lot of people are obsessed with this book. Actually, now that I'm kind of looking in it, it doesn't really seem like it's that challenging of a read. Let me know if you've read this. I sound like a broken record. Eventually, I'll read this. Just have to wait for the right time. I know that I'll like it. Maybe? I don't know, actually. I have A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle and I liked it. I listened to it as an audiobook, and so many times I go to Spotify and go to listen to this as an audiobook and it's not available. This is something that I would love to listen to as an audiobook. Maybe I'll like look on Libby and like get it as an audiobook. How many times can I say audiobook? This is a specific type of book, philosophical nonfiction, that I love to listen to because it just sounds like a podcast. Sue me. The Picture of Dorian Gray. Gothic, I think. Classic. Have heard great things from friends, so I know that it's not something that is gonna be kind of like a drag. Maybe I'll do it like as a book club. This could be fun, I think. I have Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I got 16 pages into this and then stopped reading it. Another dystopian or utopian novel, kind of like a modern classic. Oh, a classic, it looks like. Yep. This like has been calling to me for a number of years. I'll read it. I'll probably read this year. I saw something online a while back that said if you work in like PR or marketing, that this is a really important read, which makes me just like, because I work in marketing and I like it. And I'm like, I don't want to read a dystopian book about it. Next, I have Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, who wrote one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, Ninth House, that I'm tatted up for. This is a young adult novel that she wrote, and this is really high on my priority list because I know that it'll be a quick read. I love a good fantasy. I've been in just such a fantasy mood lately. This will probably be like one of my next reads. I'm really excited for it. I took it from my sister's bookshelf. It's been on my shelf for a while, but I'm ready for it. And I think that that's gorgeous. And it kind of like matches my nails right now. So I feel like I need to read it before I get a new set. 1984 by George Orwell. If you've watched my TBR videos, you know that I have publicly apologized for not reading this. We can all collectively just take a moment and boo me that I have a booktube channel and haven't read 1984. I get it. I really do get it. Next, I have The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. Another classic that I'm not going to force myself to read because I want to enjoy it. If you have any recommendations for the classics that I have mentioned, please leave it in the comments. I would love to know what you think I should go ahead and just pick up, because I will say that I had the Bell Jar on my shelf for a while, and then when I picked it up, I was like, why didn't I do that sooner? Like, not challenging, really interesting, fast-paced enough. There was no reason for me to be like, let me wait to read that because it's like advanced. So if there's any classics that you feel are really accessible that I've mentioned, let me know, because I'm happy to like bump those to the top if they're similar to like The Bell Jar or The Stranger, where you can understand them easily but still get to experience a book that is a classic for a reason. Next, I have The Devil in the Dark Water by Stuart Hurton. That sounds wrong. Who wrote The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which my friend said The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is like one of her favorite books of all time. So I have high hopes for this. This is a book that I borrowed from my friend, and every time I talk about it on my channel, I'm like, I hope she doesn't watch my channel, because she's probably like, will this freaking give me my book back? Which is what I would be saying if it was someone else with my book. I'd be like actually texting them, can I have this back, please? This is something that I feel like I will really like and that I want to read this year. Next, I have The Iliad, translated by Emily Wilson, who is the first woman to translate the Odyssey and the Iliad into English. This is said to be more accessible and more feminist than prior translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and with the new Christopher Nolan movie coming out next year, I really want to get through this. And because I love Greek mythology retellings, this just feels like required reading for me. Next, I have the book that my previous request of, can you tell me if there's an accessible classic that I should move to the top of my list? I think you're gonna say East of Eden, you should move to the top of your list, because everything that I've seen online about this book, everyone that I've seen talking about East of Eden has said that it is life-changing, incredible, fabulous, mind-boggling, and I'm like, I should get on that probably. My sister recommended this to me and I think bought it for me also. It's been sitting there with all the other classics. You can judge me. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Actually, I should do this one last. Next, I have The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. My mom got me this for Christmas. She said I liked the cover and I thought it would be something that you would like. So she didn't read it. She just got it for me. It seems like it is a darker fairy tale. Her mom gets stolen. She leaves her like one final piece of advice. It seems like it would be pretty easy. So this one will probably be soon because I feel like the ones that I have read, I've just prioritized. I've wanted to read these. Obviously, I own them and they're short and they're fast. So let's just go. Next, I have another one that my mom got me, A Dog's Purpose, and I have my dog right here with me. I think that this was gonna shatter my heart into a million pieces. Come here, go say hi. Yeah, she's so cute. You can get up here? Yeah. Oh, hi, baby. Next, we have The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I read The Penelope by Margaret Atwood, which totally different vibe, but this seems like an important read in our times. Fittingly last, we have And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. My last roommate got me this, and I've read some Agatha Christie and I liked her, and I will read this probably like as a Halloween read because Agatha Christie, as we all know, is the queen of mystery, and I feel like that is such an October vibe. I'm not going to talk about the ones that I have read for too long. I'm not going to go super in depth. I just want to talk about the fact that I really liked a lot of them to hopefully encourage you to read books that have been sitting on your physical TBR. The first book that I finished this year from my physical TBR was How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. This book was so wonderful because while it seems on the cover like a self-help book about how to do nothing, there are some questions that don't have answers, and there are some things that you can't really give blanket advice to. Do this and you'll be productive forever. It's more of kind of like, here's some ideas that relate to this concept of the attention economy. Here's some things I'm thinking about. Here's some things I've observed. Draw your own conclusions. I think at first I was a little bit resistant to that because I'm so used to a self-help book being like, do this and you'll be productive. And this was not that. It did give me a lot of hope and made me feel really grounded. Those were two things that I really needed. I would recommend this. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I think that there were extra chapters in the audiobook, which I didn't like. I think it would have been better to just read this. I was going through as I was reading and like underlining things that really stood out and kind of taking notes. That's how I typically listen to an audiobook. If I own the book, I'll be like going through the physical book too. If you're looking for a self-help, if you're looking for kind of just like a thought piece, this is really good. Next, I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Oh my gosh, 5-star book for me. The rest of my book club, like we have 5 in our book club, and our initial reviews of this book were 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star. Kind of a polarizing one, but Shirley Jackson is like the queen of gothic, whimsical, dark, quirky characters, and I loved these characters so much. This is a short one. It's been on my shelf for a while, and I'm so glad that I read it. Like, there were so many lines in this book that I was underlining thinking this is the most stunning thing I've ever read. I think that I would have loved this reading it if I had read it in high school, college. Like, this is my type of book. Then I read The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and this one took me a minute. I feel like there were certain things that I just had to sit with, which was not a bad thing whatsoever. This has been on my shelf for quite a while. My sister gifted it to me. I'm so glad that I read this. It was so thought-provoking. R.F. Kuang, I cannot put into words how intelligent this woman is, and you can just see it come through her writing. And I love when you can tell something about an author through their work of fiction. Her personality kind of just shone through this. I don't think it was like a perfect book, but it was her debut. I think that that's insanely impressive. I cannot wait to keep reading her books. This is the only book that I've read by her. I've heard amazing things about Babel. So excited. Going to get through some of the books on my physical TBR before I purchase Babel, which is part of the reason I don't want so many books on my physical TBR. Then I read Shady Hollow, which was like a cute murder mystery. Like, think Agatha Christie, but the characters are animals. It wasn't anything super memorable that I would necessarily recommend. I'm glad that I read it. It was like a really quick read, like 3 days. Then I read Spells for Forgetting, which had been sitting on my shelf. My friend from Seattle lent this to me. This takes place in the Pacific Northwest, so the vibes are stunning. The Pacific Northwest is such a magical place, even without a magical realism element to it, but obviously a magical realism lent itself so well to that place. I really liked this. This reminded me of the book We Were Liars, but if there was an element of magical realism and it was more like adult and explored some more like adult relationships. So if you liked We Were Liars, easy read. Really, really good. Then I read Outlawed by Anna North, and this was a queer Western. I said it when I was talking about this book and wanting to read it, that queer and Western should go together more. I stand by that. They went together beautifully. It was so good. The prose and the writing style was extremely like straightforward and simple, I would say, compared to what I usually read. And I really thought that it lent itself well to this type of book. And I thought that it was just a really great read. I loved every single aspect of it. Then I read Juniper and Thorn. I think I get why people like this book. I freaking hated it. It just did not work for me. There were too many similes. There was seriously pages that had 6 similes on them. Using that much simile made them so ineffective. And there were some that were so good that fell so flat because they were surrounded by like 12. So they had no meaning whatsoever. They just all kind of blurred into one. I'm all for an atmospheric setting. I'm here for flowery prose. This was too much. I understand, I think, what the author was trying to do with trauma and showing like the certain type of person that experiences trauma and who they can become. The narrator, so whiny, so like one-dimensional. I feel like the only thing we know about the characters is whether or not they're hot. She's like, my sister, she's beautiful. Every other page. And then there's just so much body horror in this book, to the point where it was just so disgustingly vile descriptions of things, and I would just be like, I'm immune to it because you've done it so freaking much in this book. It loses its impact. Usually I like a fairy tale retelling. I did not like it at all. And I feel like it didn't really deliver on its promise on what was on the back of the book. It seemed like it was going to explore, it says, caught between history and progress, blood and desire. It kind of feels like it would explore some of those themes more. The majority of it, boring. This was the only one on my physical TBR that I read that I rated 1 star. And I don't usually rate books 1 star. Typically, if I'm not enjoying it, I know that it's gonna be 1 star, like 40 pages in, and I just DNF. This one, I was like, no, let me keep going. I don't know why. It was kind of like hate reading, which I don't consider myself a hate reader usually. Like, I'll just put it down and be like, not for me, I'm not gonna yuck someone else's yum. No. Finally, my 8th book this year for my physical TBR was The Unmaking of June Farrow by the same author of Spells for Forgetting. Another friend lent me. So like 2 of my friends separate were like, you would like this. They were right. I did like this. I didn't like this one as much as Spells for Forgetting actually, even though it has better reviews and I think a lot of people did like it more. I just feel like some of the concepts that were explored in this book could have been explored more deeply, and there were times when it was a little bit confusing to read. It was like a 3.5 star if you're into the star ratings and knowing them. And I did really like all of the characters in it. The characters were extremely lovable and the pacing of the book was really good. Only 2 of the 8 books that I read from my physical TBR are books that I wouldn't necessarily recommend. And then a lot of them were like, oh my gosh, this is really great. I'm so glad I read it. So if you have books on your physical TBR, statistically, according to my research, you'll probably like them when you read them. Hopefully when I revisit this video again, because I did do this video last year, hopefully when I revisit this video, it'll be, here are the 10 books on my physical TBR, but probably not, and I'm not gonna make any promises that I can't keep. Thank you so much for watching. I don't even think I said my name in this video. It's Emily. It's great to meet you, and I hope to see you around so soon. Bye.